In this video, we're going to take a look at a brown ink by Akkerman. They're number 23. Now, as always, there's timestamps down below so you can skip around. But if you've got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. Also, down in the description is a link to the brown ink playlist, so if you wanted to see more, you can find that there. I'm an ink guy, and let's get into the first writing sample done on 90 GSM Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. We have no feather, spread, halo sheen. We do see a great deal of shading going on throughout all the stub, the extra fine, the medium. It's really nice. It goes from a nice brown to a super dark brown in areas. The extra fine took 13 seconds to dry, while medium took 21. Scrubby of the medium shows more color variation than the extra fine does, although it shows up very nice in the writing. And the smear test you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. To have a range of experience with this ink, all of the writing samples are done with a Jinhao 159 with a 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a medium, and a Jinhao X750 with an extra fine. Then a Viscosity Medici with a broad nib was inked up, used for a day, and used to take the notes for this video. The next writing sample is done on 52 GSM Tomoe River. We have no bleeding, but we do have a fair amount of ghosting. It is a very thin paper. We have no feather, spread, halo sheen. There is little bits of shading that are showing up in the extra fine and even in the medium, but not in the stub. The extra fine took 20 seconds to dry, while medium took 38 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show almost no color variation, but it definitely is there in the writing. And the smear test you could not recover if you smeared while you were writing. I agree with Vita. There's a lot to learn by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. A line of ink is put down, and then it's put in the water for 10 to 15 seconds. And at first glance, this looks like a true brown that's just pushing its way all the way to the top. But if you look at the very top, especially on the left half of it, you see a little bit of red that is showing its face just right there a little bit. Probably where that shading gets to come from. Now, the one on the right that's allowed to dry for 10 minutes before it's put into water, it doesn't travel nearly as far. It does start to form a line at the bottom. You don't see nearly as much of that red at the very top. It's really very covered up. It does give the idea that there may be a little bit of resistance for this ink. The next writing sample is done on 80 GSM Rhodia dot pad. No bleeding, no ghosting. We have no feather, spread, halo sheen. We have no shading in the stub, but we do have some nice shading that's showing itself in the extra fine. Again, it's going from a dark to a very dark, so it's there, like look at jumps, lighter, or it's a dark to a very dark. The medium, no shading coming through here. The extra fine took 11 seconds to dry, while the medium took 21 seconds to dry. Scrubby of the extra fine does show some color variation left to right, not sure that it's going to show on camera. The medium even shows a tiny bit, but we really didn't get to see it in the medium. We did in the extra fine. And the smear test you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. The smear is allowed to dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I would not use this in a note-taking situation if I had to go back and highlight. There's a lot of blowout, and some of that highlighter is becoming a bit muddy looking. Now, water's lifting most of, but not all of it. It's a very light khaki that's left behind. And the same thing for the pen flush. It did only take water to get this out of my pen. 1/3 bleach solution is destroying it. The next writing sample is done on TWSBI notebook paper. We have no bleeding, but some minor ghosting. No feather, spread, halo sheen. It is showing some shading in the stub where it's darker to, or it's lighter to darker to lighter. It's showing shading in the extra fine, going darker to lighter to darker and darker to lighter. No shading in the medium. The extra fine took 11 seconds to dry, while the medium took 17 seconds to dry. The extra fine is also a little bit lighter than the stub, while the medium's a little bit darker than the stub. Scrubby for the extra fine shows a little color variation, the medium shows none, and that's largely what we got. Now the smear test, you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average viscosity is 2.5, and the realm of normals 2.1 to 2.9. Akkerman's number 23 has a viscosity of 1.93, so it's a little bit of a wet ink. If you're interested in how the viscosity test and all of that's done, then down in the description is a link to that video. But now let's take a look at moleskin paper. Notoriously bad for fountain pens, and rightfully so, but instead of just tearing it apart, let's see if we can use pens if we really wanted to. The medium has a ton of bleed into the paper, not through the paper, not ruining the next page. The extra fine has tons of spotting, but not touching the page underneath, leads to a lot of ghosting. You couldn't use the back of the page, just not corrupting the page underneath. Now, the medium has a ton of feathering all over it, as does the extra fine. It has no spread, no halo, no sheen, but the extra fine actually is showing a few spots of shading. It took 5 seconds to dry. Its scrubby showed color variation, which it has. It is noticeably lighter than the medium. The smear test you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average dry time is 17 seconds, and the realm of normal is 13 to 21 seconds. Akkerman's number 23 has an average dry time of 21 seconds, putting it on the edge, but still normal. The last writing sample is done on 20-pound copy paper. Now we do experience bleed that touches the page underneath in the medium, not in the extra fine, although the extra fine is coming very deep into the page, leading to an entirety of ghosting. No using the back of the paper here unless you're going to destroy both sides. That medium, it's touching the next page. It's just not any good. Now, we get feathering, a lot of feathering in both of them. We do get spread in the medium. It becomes about a broad. The extra fine becomes about a fine. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the medium. We have no halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine took 1 second to dry. It's scrubby, shows no color variation. We didn't get it. And the smear test, you can't smear it, so you don't have to worry about it. Instead of finding inks that look like Akkerman's number 23, I'd prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I decided to go with a blue ink. I really do like putting blues with browns, and I chose Atramentis Madame de Pompadour. It's a dark blue. If you'd prefer different complement colors, then down in the description are links to those playlists. So what do I think of Akkerman's number 23? I do like using brown inks in this pen. It isn't performing as well on this Lamy paper, but the other writing samples show it looking really good. So it shows how that trinity of pen, ink, and paper can be so important. So what nib and pen are going to give the best writing experience with this ink? I really don't want that super dark, solid tone that you get from a wet pen, which is what I was experiencing with the Visconti. I really, on the brown inks, like having the shading. I think it does so much for it. And a medium flow, medium or fine nib, does very well with this ink. I hope you got something out of this video, and in the next video, we're going to take a look at Noodler's Periwinkle.